Okay, welcome everybody, and thank you very much for coming along today to the seventh CRA Standards Unlocked workshop that we've organised. I'd like to first of all thank our host, the Parliament here in Bucharest, for a very illustrious venue, and we have a lot of very illustrious speakers as well. So this is, as I said, the seventh of our workshops that we've organised. The workshops are co-organised by two EC-funded projects, and we're very pleased to have the European Commission here with Camille, CyberStand and Stand for CR, and also our hosts and co-organisers, the Romanian National Cybersecurity Centre and the Constanța Maritime University. So I'd like to thank all of them for helping us to organise this event. So in today's event, as I said, we've been around Europe in different places. We've heard lots of questions being asked about the Cyber Resilience Act. This is one of the largest legislations across Europe with high impact to anybody producing digital goods and selling them on the European market. So it impacts companies around Europe, but also internationally as well. But at the end of the day, what it really brings is better cybersecurity, better best practices, safer products, and more trust in what is produced by European companies. So, as you can see, the types of questions we get vary because it depends on the amount of awareness that companies and organizations have about the Cyber Resilience Act. There are questions from what is it? What are its implications? Who do we speak to? And how can you get support? So in today's agenda, we'll look to answer many of these questions and really try to get down into high-level topics and also nitty-gritty topics as well. So we'll have an overview of the European landscape from the European Commission and the European Cybersecurity Centre, which is based obviously here in Bucharest. We'll look at the national picture as well, including the National Cybersecurity Centre, SME associations, and some of the European digital innovation hubs as well, which are here in Romania. We'll also be hearing from the people who are driving the standards, so the European standards organisations, CEN, CENELEC and ETSI, and also the rapporteurs who are driving the creation of the standards, which will be implemented soon, and also EU-funded projects which have been funded to support compliance for SMEs of the Cyber Resilience Act. As I said, this is the seventh workshop, so we've been all over the place in Europe, and these workshops will continue after the summer. We've had over 800 participants, over 150 speakers, so it's a really wide variety of perspectives from the different countries we've been in, and also you can track the progress of the Cyber Resilience Act and the standards being developed for them. So all of these workshops are online if you want to go back and watch them all, but certainly there's a wealth of information available there. And today we've got around 300 registrants, most of them online, obviously, and 70 people attending here in person. And we have bucked the trend slightly in terms of gender balance, with almost 50% of participants being female, which is fantastic. My name is Nick Ferguson. I'm a Senior Manager at Trust IT Services. We're an SME based in Pisa in Italy, and I'll be chairing today's event. And I'm also the coordinator of the CyberStand project. So with that, I'd like to hand over to we're very happy to have our first speaker, which is Mircea Abudan, who is the president of the Senate here in Romania. Over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to host this important event here at the Senate on a very actual topic nowadays in the geopolitical context, as we all understand. So please allow me to have some general remarks because I have to go run the plenary session of the Senate. We have some important issues to debate today. So Romania understands clearly that vulnerabilities in cyberspace now know no borders, and that the response to them must be collective, coordinated, and based on common standards. I am pleased that Romania is home to the ECCC, an institution that I helped establish and that was inaugurated in my mandate as head of the Prime Minister's office in 2023, together with the network of NCCs across the member states. The ECCC forms a dynamic ecosystem capable of strengthening the Union's cyber resilience, supporting excellence in research and enhancing the competitiveness of European industry in this field. I salute the team of Romania's NCC present here today. They play an essential role. It serves as the bridge between European policies, funding and innovation, and businesses, universities, research institutes, and the public sector. Romania has enormous potential to become a European cybersecurity hub, supported by a unique combination of genuine technical expertise, a highly skilled professional community, and a strategically important geographical position. It is in this spirit of coordination and shared purpose that the Cyber Resilience Act becomes particularly relevant. It represents a historic step forward. For the first time, Europe is establishing clear and binding rules for the security of digital products from their design stage throughout their entire life cycle. This is not about bureaucracy, it is about the real protection of citizens, businesses, and critical infrastructure in a world where cyber threats are becoming increasingly sophisticated and frequent. Dialogues like this one today between legislators, standardization bodies, and industry are important. Legislation without applicable standards remains an intention. Standards without industry involvement remains theoretical. An industry without a clear legal framework remains vulnerable. Today, we are bringing together all these dimensions, and that is the deepest value of this event. The Senate of Romania understands this reality and strongly supports these efforts, so we remain an active and responsible partner. Thank you for your attention. I wish you good luck with your debates today and hope to see you again on another important event that you will host. So good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mitch, and we really value you coming, and we know that you have very little time, so that's really nice of you. So I'd like to now hand over to Ana Maria Busoniu, who is the Director General of the Authority of Digitalization in Romania and also the National Cybersecurity Center as well. So Ana Maria, over to you.
And good morning, everyone. Thank you for being in Bucharest. And I think putting Romania on this map is very important. Before anything else, I would like to express my sincere thanks to the organizer of this Cyber Resilience Act Standards Tour for bringing this important conversation to Bucharest. And special thanks to the gratitude to Mr. President of the Senate, Mircea Budan, because he supports the activity of the NCC and the ECCC every single day, and your commitment to the cybersecurity and supporting on putting this topic high level of Romanian policy. It's the thing that makes the difference, and on what we build in the ecosystem. So first of all, I'm speaking today in my capacity as National Coordination Center for Romania. As you know, we are part of the network of the 27 National Coordination Centers across European Union, and we work hand in hand with ECCC. in order to strengthen the European cybersecurity ecosystem, to use with a great impact the European money that Digital Europe program and Horizon put at the disposal of the member states in order to increase the maturity of the cybersecurity resilience in Europe. So from here we start. The Cyber Resilience Act is not just another regulation. It's a reality, and starting to the end of this year, we have a key milestone and the mandatory of reporting actively exploit vulnerabilities. It's a reality. So in less than 3 months away, the clock is running, and we need to understand very clear the rules that each company needs to play in this ecosystem. The Cyber Resilience Act introduced this mandatory cybersecurity requirement for manufacturers of products with digital elements, covering the full cycle from planning, design to development and maintenance. So, if I put it like this, we discuss about cybersecurity not only by design, but starting with procurement. So we need to be sure that the full cycle of the project are built on cybersecurity baseline. So we know that for many companies, especially SMEs, the real challenges is not understanding that Cyber Resilience Act exists, but understanding what it means in their specific products. And I think this discussion of today on explaining more about the standards and how the company can prepare to face this new reality, it's essential. So our role is to support the community in Romania, and for this we are involved in many projects that support this as tools. And here I will mention cyber crazy project, but my colleague will explain later each project in which NCC is involved. Secure project also is one strategic project at the level of the European Union in which we are involved. And also I'm happy to announce that Romanian NCC will also launch at the end of this month a call for companies in order to be compliant with the Cyber Resilience Act. We discuss about an cascade funding. We design to support in packages depending on the company size and also about the maturity of each project. In fact, what we will do is to be sure that all these consultations are used in order to create and design investment that are tailor-made for the Romanian companies. Also in the today agenda, we will have enough time to enter in concrete details. At this first step, I think it's important to understand how we can use all the knowledge that is on the table and how we can take this in our companies, in our institution in order to collaborate better. So thanks a lot for coming in Romania, in Bucharest. I'm happy that we work with you on this and also with the Constanța Maritime University, because they are our partners, and together with the entire ecosystem of companies and universities from Romania, we work closely to support the adoption and increasing the cyber resilience of the European Union. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna-Maria. I think you covered the whole spectrum as well, from the European level, the national level, EU-funded projects, a lot that we have here, and also the companies as well who have to implement. So that's fantastic. Thank you very much. So our next speaker is Nicolae Lancu, who's the Vice President of the Maritime Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. So of course, this is a very important institute in Romania, and I hand over to you.
Yeah. So thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. It is a really great pleasure and honor for me, on behalf of Constanța Maritime University and our Maritime Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, to welcome you to the CRA Standards Unlocked EU Tour in Bucharest. We are delighted to support this important initiative and to co-host a community of experts committed to strengthening cybersecurity, resilience, and innovation across the European Union. And I would like to express our sincere appreciation to the organizers, in particular to Federica and Nick and their team, for their dedication, the CyberStand and Stanford CRA projects, as well as to the European Cybersecurity Center of Competence and NCCRO, and all European partners contributing to the development of practical solutions, standards, and guidance that will support the implementation of the Cyber Resilience Act. As already mentioned here, the Cyber Resilience Act represents one of the most significant developments in European cybersecurity policy in recent years. It reflects a fundamental shift in how we approach digital security. Cybersecurity can no longer be treated as an optional feature or an addition to the business core functions. It must become an integral component of the entire life cycle of digital products and services, from design and development to deployment, maintenance, and end-of-life cycle management. And that's exactly where our role works well, actually, as a university. For universities, research centers, and innovation ecosystems, this transformation carries important implications. We are not only educating the future workforce, we are helping shape the technologies, methodologies, and governance frameworks that will underpin Europe's digital future. This creates a shared responsibility to ensure that innovation and security evolve together. And at Constanța Maritime University, we have witnessed firsthand how cybersecurity has evolved from a specialized technical discipline into a strategic enabler of resilience across critical sectors. Whether we speak about maritime transport, energy systems, logistics networks, digital infrastructure, healthcare, finance, and emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, cybersecurity has become inseparable from economic competitiveness, societal stability, and even national security. This understanding led us almost a decade ago to begin discussions about introducing cybersecurity education into a university traditionally focused on the navigation and engineering and maritime professions. At that time, the idea was not necessarily obvious. However, we recognize that the future of maritime operations, transport systems, and critical infrastructure would increasingly depend on digital technologies and consequently on their security and resilience. And as a result, in 2019, Constanța Maritime University became one of the first universities in Romania to launch a master program dedicated to cybersecurity. And building on this success, in 2023, we further expanded our commitment by introducing a bachelor's program in cybersecurity, creating a comprehensive educational pathway for a future cybersecurity specialist. This is why initiatives such as Cyber Resilience Act are so important, because they encourage us to move beyond the reactive approaches towards a culture of security by design, resilience by design, and trust by design. Understanding this transformation, we can further expect a strengthened Europe's cyber resilience. And this is not just the solely responsibility of cybersecurity professionals. It is a shared responsibility involving policymakers, industry, academia, standardization bodies, and I would say the final users. Only by working together, we can ensure that Europe's digital transformation remains secure, innovative, and resilient. Today's event provides an excellent opportunity to bridge policy, standardization, research, and industry, and the participation of standardization experts, policymakers, researchers, and practitioners, both physically and in online, demonstrates the collaborative approach that Europe needs in order to succeed. Therefore, we encourage all participants to take advantage of the discussions, share their experiences, raise questions, and contribute to their perspectives. I'm going to do it. And the future European cybersecurity framework will be stronger if it reflects the realities, challenges, and ambitions of those operating on the front line of digital transformation. Thank you very much for joining us today. I wish you a productive, insightful, and inspiring event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nikolai. And it's very important, obviously, this alignment and support that education and higher education can provide as a baseline for how things go forward with the implementation of the Cyber Resilience Act. So thank you very much, and thank you for the presentations from our opening speakers. That really sets the scene, I think, for the rest of the day. So we're really going to set the scene now. We're very pleased to have Camille Dornier from the European Commission, who has attended all of our workshops. And I'd really like to thank her for the support that she's given this activity. She's travelled with us, and she's presented online from Brussels, but it's a very important message when we go out to different countries that the Commission are very much driving what is happening in the Cyber Resilience Act. So in this session, we'll hear from Camille. We'll also hear from the European standardization organizations on how they're taking forward the development of the standards, which, as Mircea mentioned, standards, cybersecurity without standards standards are essential, basically. So, Camille, I hand over to you, and here is the...
Thank you very much, Nick, for the introduction, and good morning, everyone. My name is Camille Dornier. I work for the European Commission, DG Connect, and I wanted to give you a presentation of the main principles of the Cyber Resilience Act. But before this, please allow me to thank the Romanian authorities, including the Senate and also the Romanian National Cybersecurity Coordination Center, for their kind hospitality. It's really a great pleasure to be here today. So now coming back to the Cyber Resilience Act and to what it contains. So because we've been talking a lot and mentioning this name a lot, but I just want to make sure that we all have a shared understanding of what this legislation implies, what it implies in terms of obligations, and also in terms of timeline. I also wanted to give you an overview of what we have been doing as European Commission since its adoption and before it enters into application, because we are currently in this transition period. So the Cyber Resilience Act has not yet entered into application, and now we are, of course, working very hard to make sure that this entry into application can be as smooth as possible. So this is the idea behind the Cyber Resilience Act, behind the CRA. The goal is to create cybersecurity throughout the whole supply chain in Europe. So this legislation applies to a broad range of products. We call them the products with digital elements in the CRA. So this includes the smartphones that are in our pockets, the laptops which are on the desk, the TVs, the smart TVs in front of our eyes, but also many other products such as smart cards, HSM, and so on and so forth, and also standalone software. So here the rationale is that Europe is only as strong as its weakest link. So this is why we have such a broad range of products covered. And also this is why this is a legislation which applies to products before they are placed on the market. So the idea here is that as a manufacturer, once the CRA enters into application, you can only place on the market products that present an adequate level of cybersecurity. And I will explain in the next slide what it means exactly to have an adequate level of cybersecurity. So here on the slide, you can see that you have a cheese on the left, cheese portion on the left side, which presents some holes. It's a bit of a metaphor for a situation where products may present some vulnerabilities and maybe may not have an adequate level of cybersecurity. And what we want to create is a situation on the right side, which is a situation where these vulnerabilities are adequately mitigated and where we have created this cybersecurity throughout the whole supply chain. So as I mentioned, the Cyber Resilience Act is a legislation which is a placement on the market legislation, meaning that these are rules that a manufacturer needs to comply with in order to place the products with digital elements on the EU market. So this is both hardware and software. And this includes different types of rules. For instance, the secure configuration by default. This includes also the protecting the confidentiality of data in transit and at rest. So these are examples of these rules that the CRA contains. The obligations lie with the people, with the persons with the responsibility for the products. So these are the manufacturers, but not only, also the importers and distributors. So we want to make sure that there is no loophole in the distribution of the products, and that whomever needs to be responsible for this obligation will be. Also, despite the fact that this is a legislation applying for products when they want to be placed or when they need to be placed on the EU market, actually the legislation does not stop. The obligations do not stop once the product is placed on the market, but they actually stem throughout the whole life cycle of the product, because you know that cybersecurity is a moving target. A product which is cyber secure one day might not be the next day, because we have vulnerabilities arising constantly. So this is why the obligations, or to be more precise, the essential requirements of the Cyber Resilience Act are also applying throughout the whole life cycle of the product, in particular these vulnerability handling requirements, but also the reporting obligations, which were mentioned by Anna Maria on the actively exploited vulnerabilities and severe incidents. And how do you demonstrate that you comply with the CRA. I think that's a very relevant question here that many manufacturers can ask themselves. So while you have a conformity assessment process whereby you will demonstrate as a manufacturer that indeed you are compliant with the CRA, and the CRA envisage different types of conformity assessment processes. So we estimate that around 90% of the products will be concerned by self-assessment, meaning that manufacturers can assess the products themselves. But for some other product categories, which we call the important and critical product categories, which are listed in Annexes 3 and 4 of the CRA, there is a need to involve a third-party conformity assessment body, with the exception for some products of the application of the standards. I wanted to mention just as examples, because sometimes it remains very abstract, but I wanted to mention some examples of important and critical product categories. So here we have the identity and access management system, the operating system, the firewalls, the VPNs, the hardware devices with security boxes, such as the payment terminals. So those are examples of important and critical product categories listed in the CRA, which are subject to this different conformity assessment process. And of course, here, because this legislation is what we call a legislation following the new legislative framework approach, the NLF approach. So it also relies quite strongly on the harmonized standards for its implementation, and this is the topic of today. So the CRA foresees also the development of standards, of what we call harmonized standards, which can grant presumption of conformity with the essential requirement of the legislation. So this is for manufacturers. Of course, there is a strong incentive to use this harmonized standards in order to facilitate their compliance with the legislation. And this is also a presentation that will be given later on by the colleagues from the standardization organizations, and they will explain what they are doing exactly, which type of standards are being developed. And finally, I wanted to mention also the role of the market surveillance authorities for the enforcement of the legislation. So this will be done at the national level, actually. And here, the member states will play a very important role in making sure that these products placed on the market effectively comply with the legislation. So this is, here you have a visual representation of the content of the CRA. So as a manufacturer, you need to start by defining the intended purpose and reasonably foreseeable use of your product. So you need to know what your product is meant to do, in which type of environment it's meant to be used, by which type of users. And based on this, you can perform a risk assessment, which is a legal obligation from the CRA. So you look at this intended purpose and reasonably foreseeable use, at the product characteristics, and looking at these features, what are the risks that are presented by the product. So this is a very important part of the implementation of the Cyber Resilience Act that will actually inform also the application of the essential requirements of the legislation. So these essential requirements you will find in the Annex 1 of the CRA, and you have two types of essential requirements. So the first type is the product-related essential requirements. So for instance, as I mentioned, the secure configuration by default, or protecting the confidentiality of the data minimization. So these are examples of essential requirements on the product. And you also have vulnerability handling essential requirements, meaning that once your product is placed on the market, if there is a vulnerability arising concerning your product, you need to mitigate it. So I often hear, do I need to patch all vulnerabilities? And actually, no, this is not the case. There are different ways of dealing with vulnerabilities, of mitigating them. Also, the Cyber Resilience Act is very much a risk-based legislation. This is very important. meaning that the greater the risk, the more mitigation measures and the more stringent these mitigation measures need to be, and vice versa. So this is a very important point to ensure the proportionality of the legislation as well. So, of course, as mentioned, once you have applied the essential requirements of the CRA, you need to perform a conformity assessment depending on your product type. So for most of the products, it will be a self-assessment, and then you can place your products on the market. Of course, still ensuring that your product meets the essential requirements. For instance, when it comes to the vulnerability handling, that you're managing the vulnerabilities appropriately. So you need to have also an adequate policy in place. And you also need to comply with the reporting obligations, which are a different type of obligations, which concern more specifically the actively exploited vulnerabilities and the severe incidents that manufacturers need to report via the ENISA single reporting platform. And for those obligations, actually, the timeline is quite crucial because they will start applying on the 11th of September of this year. So this is the first part of the CRA entering into application already in 2026 and already in less than 2 months. But I will come back to the timeline in actually right now. So this is the CRA implementation milestones. So as I mentioned, we have a 3-year transition period at the moment because the CRA is going to enter into full application in December 2027. So last year, we launched the standardization request, which was accepted by Sensenelec and ETSI. So the development of the standards is ongoing. We have also CRA expert group. So this is a mix of stakeholders coming from the private sectors and also member states advising us on the implementation of the legislation, for instance, to develop some guidance documents. We also have a coordination in place with the member states because, as I mentioned, they have a very specific role to play in the implementation of the CRA as market surveillance authorities, but also when it comes to the notification of the conformity assessment bodies. So the designation of this conformity assessment bodies, this is also something taking place at the national level. In 2025, we were also glad to publish an FAQ, which is on our CRA implementation website. So it's on the Commission website, and I really kindly invite you to have a look because there you will find a lot of relevant documentation concerning the CRA. And we also adopted an implementing act and a delegated act. So these are pieces of legislation supporting the implementation of the CRA, specifying it. And here I wanted to mention more precisely the implementing act on the technical descriptions of the important and critical product categories. So this is a piece, so this implementing act describes more precisely what these important and critical product categories are. For instance, when it comes to the identity and access management system, the firewalls, the VPNs, there was a need also to give more clarity to the market on what we mean so that the manufacturers know in which category to which categories they belong and hence which conformity assessment process they need to perform, either self-assessment or third-party conformity assessment. And this year, we have published a CRA draft legal guidance. So we published it for consultation in April, and we received 252 contributions as part of this public consultation that we are also processing, but I will come back to this. We are also working very hard when it comes to the development of the harmonized standards to support the CRA that will be adopted by the end of this year. And we are also working to create this ecosystem of notified bodies, of conformity assessment bodies, to make sure that the manufacturers can go to this conformity assessment bodies to perform the procedure to make sure that they are compliant with the CRA before it enters into application. And the next year, you can see that we have also some more standards to come, but also additional guidance. And that this is when the CRA basically enters into a full application in December 2027. So we are really, as you can imagine, working around the clock here to make sure that this application, entry into application, is as smooth as possible. So now coming back in more details to these implementation activities that we are doing as European Commission. So the FAQ gives you more indication on the scope of the legislation. So what type of software is covered, for instance. Also the role of standards, or what do the vulnerability handling obligations mean. So here you can see one of the common questions indeed is, do I need to fix all vulnerabilities, or how can I ensure a product is free from vulnerabilities? So these are some of the questions that the FAQ answers, and that you can find on the website that I was mentioning. When it comes to the CRA draft legal guidance, so this is legal interpretation, so Commission interpretation on the text of the CRA. So here we are currently processing the feedback from the consultation, which is now closed, and we expect to publish this the final version of the legal guidance shortly after the summer, and this includes some topics such as open source, remote data processing solutions. Some very important aspects, important concepts of the CRA are covered in this legal guidance. So many times we are actually asked questions by stakeholders on these concepts, and actually also many times these answers can be found either in the FAQ or in the CRA legal guidance. So I really encourage everyone to have a look at these documents. And the guidance to follow will concern the interplay with other pieces of EU legislation. So you might have heard of the AI Act or the DORA, which is a legislation concerning the cybersecurity in the financial sector. So these are two pieces of legislation where the interplay with the CRA is particularly relevant. So we are also providing some more explanations and more interpretation on how this interplay can work. So also we were mentioning the support to SMEs, which is indeed an important aspect of the CRA. Actually, the CRA mentions explicitly SMEs and the need to have also a bit more of a tailor-made approach for them. So this is why we have these support actions, and actually the CyberStand project is also one of them. And this is also the opportunity to thank the CyberStand partners for also their great work to support SMEs. And there will be this afternoon, I believe, some more sessions talking about different projects, other projects to support SMEs. So here, indeed, this is, I think, a very important aspect, because SMEs are eager to receive more explanations, but also more tools. So this is something that we are currently developing also with ENISA to have, for instance, you might have seen the ENISA Secure by Design playbook, which has been published recently, which gives also some indications on how SMEs can fulfill this principle of security by design. So these are the types of actions that we do also as the European Commission and together with ENISA to support SMEs. But of course, the projects that are also run in parallel are also an essential piece, and the harmonized standards being developed will also strongly facilitate compliance by SMEs as well. So I also wanted to mention to you the ecosystem of conformity assessment bodies. So indeed, at the moment in this transition period, we are in the phase where member states can start notifying, they can start actually notifying conformity assessment bodies, because the authorities have been put in place, including the notifying authorities, and now they can start designating the conformity assessment bodies. So meaning that as a manufacturer, you will you will already see to which organization you can turn to when it comes to the conformity assessment process. So this is also indeed an important moment in this respect, and very timely as well, because it's since this month that conformity assessment bodies can start being notified. The objective for us, the goal, of course, is to have a sufficient number of conformity assessment bodies in place by December 2026, so by the end of this year. So we have around 6 months indeed to make sure that we can foster building this ecosystem. And for this, we have several strategies, and one of them is to explore the synergies with what already exists. So we already have conformity assessment bodies for the Radio Equipment Directive Delegated Act. We already have conformity assessment bodies for the EU cybersecurity certification scheme on common criteria. So we know that there are entities with cybersecurity competencies and which could also build on this to become conformity assessment bodies for the CRA. So this is what we're doing together with the European Accreditation Association and also together with the conformity assessment bodies themselves. And finally, as a transition also to the next speakers, I just wanted to mention, so this is the last element in terms of implementation of the CRA that I wanted to mention. This is the standards. So here we have sent a standardization request last year to Sensenelec and ETSI, asking for 41 standardization deliverables. In the end, some of these standards were merged, so we have around 36 standards in development at the moment. So this is a huge handover in terms of cybersecurity standards, which are currently being developed. And here I just wanted to explain briefly before giving the floor to the next speakers. I wanted to briefly explain the logic of this standardization request that we issued. So we have both horizontal standards and vertical standards. So the horizontal standards are not product specific. That's why we call them this way. And we have type A, so that's the tip of the pyramid, which is a framework setting the main principles for cyber resilience, and also it's a standardization deliverable that gives you some elements when it comes to how to securely design a product. So it's a bit about the secure lifecycle development. Then we also have a standard in development, which is type B on the left side, so with a deadline in October 2027, which is a collection of security controls. So this is also product agnostic. It's not a product specific standard, but the idea is to have this catalog which details per CRA essential requirements which security controls can be adequate. And we also have the vulnerability handling standard. So that's another type B, which is currently in development. So this one is actually has a particular role to play in the ecosystem of standards because it covers all the essential requirements relating to vulnerability handling. So as I mentioned, the main idea is that when a vulnerability arises, you need to mitigate it. And these are, in essence, what these vulnerability handling essential requirements cover. And we expect these particular standards covering these vulnerability handling requirements to grant presumption of conformity as a standalone standard. In a standalone manner. And finally, we also have some standards covering the important and critical product categories. So all these categories of product mentioned in the annexes 3 and 4. So I was giving you some examples, for instance, the routers, the boot managers, the operating systems, and so on and so forth. So they will all have their standards, which are currently in development, and you have some of the rapporteurs, some of the leading experts also in the room today, and they will be very much better placed than me to give you some details on their work, which is currently ongoing with a deadline set for October 2026. And on this, I wanted to thank you for your attention. I hope I could give you a clear overview of the content of the legislation, but also explaining what we do as European Commission at the moment to facilitate the entry into application. And I will hand over the floor to you, Nick, and of course I'm available for questions or comments.
Thank you very much, Camille. I wonder if there are any immediate questions from anybody here in the room. Okay. Okay, with that, I'd like to hand over to Yves. So Yves Le Boucher is from Sen and Senelec, and he's basically liaising with all of the standards experts working in the various technical committees, which are working on the cyber resilience side. So Yves, over to you.
Thank you very much, Nick, at least for those theses related to Senelec. Those under ETSI leads, George Sharkov will speak on behalf of ETSI today, and technical officer is Laure Pourcin to my right side. Yes, my name is Yves Le Boucher. I'm representing Senelec and working at Senelec, as we just said, as a project manager for several of the TCs, and then trying the best to support and process the harmonization of the standards, supporting the CRA. And so we will give a detailed insight on where we are and how the setup on the horizontals and the verticals are. But maybe first, also on behalf of Senelec and together with George for ETSI, I would like to thank for the opportunity to give this overview on the harmonized standards on the CRA today, and hopefully exchange views then on how European standards can help to strengthen cybersecurity and in the end support a secure and competitive European digital economy. So who we are. The European standardization bodies. Of course, these are the official 3 European standardization organizations which are recognized by the European Union to develop harmonized European standards that support the legislation, enable the market access, practical solution to share the technical challenges, and for the Cyber Resilience Act, we act also as the central point to deliver the standards that will help the manufacturers to demonstrate the compliance and improve the cybersecurity in the end. This is, yeah, I think I can already skip this one because we saw the overall view just a second ago by Camille. We have this triangle which is separated in here, as we see in the top parts for the horizontals, and on the lower parts for the verticals that we will have a view in a second. For the horizontals, I mean, we can say the whole work program is divided in 41 topics that need to be covered on the horizontals and verticals. The 2 different settings for vertical horizontals and the verticals. No, I'm too fast. So if we look into the horizontal standards itself, these standards are important because they provide to the manufacturers practical guidance for the self-assessment process, helping them to demonstrate the conformity with the essential requirements of the CRA. This work on the horizontals is mainly allocated to Senelec JTC 13, especially to the working group 9. We have 3 parts of activities here, which is the first one is the project team 1, PT1 called, which covers the principles of cyber resilience. So to say, the first one is the so-called 40,000-1-1. It's on the vocabulary, so provide the terms and definitions that are commonly used in the cybersecurity requirements. The second one of PT1 is principles for cyber resilience, so general cybersecurity principles and general risk assessment activities for all products, including generic elements to support the development of the vertical standards. And we have then the PT2 activity, PT3 first activities. I'm complementing with the 40,000-1-3, which is specifically for the vulnerability handling, so specifies vulnerability handling requirements, both at process and product level. These are the two activities that need to be closed this year as a deadline. And then PT2 is with a deadline foreseen for the next year. So the 40,000-1-4, which is on the security controls and generic security requirements, foreseen to address the essential product requirements, provides a library of security controls, provides mapping of the essential requirements to security controls, and builds up on EN 80,031 series, which augmented with additional security controls. This is the setup for the horizontals. And then I suggest that we have a look on the verticals directly. Give me seconds, I need to follow. This is work which is exercised by all three European standardization bodies, CENELEC and ETSI. These standards focus on the specific product categories identified by the European Commission in the implementing regulation. The work is carried out, as I said, by the three ASOs in a close coordination across the relevant technical committees. Also, of course, to ensure consistency, coordination, and in the end, avoid any kind of duplication. In total, 13 harmonized standards have been requested by the European Commission for the verticals. Once cited in the OJ, in the official journal of the European Union, these standards will provide to the manufacturers presumption of conformity with the essential requirements of the CRA. And of course, as we heard and we are supported today already, this is pretty much an ambitious program which needs good support, dedicated project teams of technical experts, and of course the very most important work of the rapporteurs. Those of you are here with us today. And this work is funded through the European Union and EFTA programs to help and to accelerate the development of these standards in the end. Then with the next slide, I think it's time to look into the dedicated TC work. And the first one we will start with is the one of ETSI TC Cyber Working Group EUSR. And so I hand off to my colleague, George.
Okay. Hello, good morning, and thanks again for that opportunity to present the status of work. My name is George Sharkov. I'm vice chair of this working group under Technical Committee Cyber at ETSI. EUSR, don't ask ChatGPT what EUSR means, because it will answer you, what is that, like end user special group, special whatever, yeah. So it is EU standardization request to answer. And that was special group dedicated to coordinate drafting of 18, the work on 18 of the specific product standards, vertical standards, and also to coordinate the work with the CENELEC, the different working groups, and especially JTC 13, work group 9, and other. Also coordinating the work is not only TC Cyber, just Technical Committee Cyber. Say a few words about the ETSI as well. ETSI is one of the standardization organizations established back in 1988 and from the French Telecom Ministry, and to make standards in telecom. That's ETSI, European Telecom Standardization Institute. But Then it worked on ICT, many ICT standards. Practically in 1999, that was the GSM standards that paved the way for digital mobile communications. And since 2014, we have the technical committee cyber that I'm a member of. I represent their small business standards organization and digital SME, as you can see from the title. And I will make some comments related to SME implementation. That's also the purpose of our workshop. And then we have also the technical committee SAI, securing AI. That has some relation to do with that, but maybe that will be answering some questions later on. And also we coordinate the work with the experts that are stand for CR under this grant and rapporteurs. Some of the rapporteurs you will hear later on. And yeah, next one. Okay. Our main work is related to vertical. Some of the verticals, as you can see, it's mainly product oriented, and the large category is like 16 standard related to important products class 1. If you just to remind you, I think Camille said that class 1, those are risky products, but they would allow self-assessment if you adhere as a company, because that's, I assume that you represent a lot of companies here, and would allow self-assessment if you adhere to the harmonized standard. Or otherwise, if you use some specific internal standards, then you have to use the third-party conformity assessment, like with notified bodies. And you will see later on, I will tell you the status of this, the progress of development of these standards, but a lot of those products with the digital component, they are related somehow to the network security, application security, and so on. So those are browsers, password managers, software, this antivirus in general, VPNs, network management systems, and so on. However, I would draw your attention to some data related to more massive consumer products. And those are like not just smart home, general purpose virtual assistants, or any smart home products with security functionalities, including also personal wearable products, which excluding the category of health monitoring. And what else? Yeah, it was the toys, internet connected toys. So those might be of interest actually, because they concern a massive, I mean, common market, and of class 2, which are higher risk, and they would require third-party necessary, mandatory third-party conformity assessment. Those are hypervisors, container runtime systems, firewalls, IPDS, intrusion detection and prevention systems, network functions, and telecom. So those are the 18 vertical standards, and I will tell you later on the status of their development. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, George. That was the overview on the ETSI TC Cyber USSR activities. We have, of course, mainly the same kind of classification for the activities in the CEN and CENELEC TCs. Regarding the work program, here the first we're looking is the CEN TC224. The projects are handled in the working group 17. We have a classification of 3 categories. So we have class 1 important products, 1 project. We have a second one for the important product class 2. And we have for the critical products here as well, the smart card applications. It's ambitious, and but compared to the others, a slightly smaller work program. Nevertheless, it's challenging, but progressive. But we will have a look on the situation where these standards are in their development afterwards. CENELEC TC47X is working group 1 to 4. We have for the important products class 1 the microprocessors, so this SX and FPGA related. The second one for the important products class 2 is the microprocessors and microcontrollers. And under critical products is smart cards and similar devices, including the secure elements. The next one is a Senelec TC65X allocated to working group 3. For the class 1 products, they have 5 projects. And for the important products class 2, there is 1 project on firewalls. There is no allocation to the critical products. The last one is the second one of Sensenai JTC13 working group 6. Just to remind at the beginning for the horizontals, this work is allocated to JTC13 working group 9. So this JTC has quite a big work program here for the working group 6. Product security is on the smart meter gateways with the smart metering systems. That's the overview on the work program, which is shared and coordinated among the Sensenelec TCs and ETSI, as we had at the beginning. And for this slide, I hand over back to you, George, which represents the timeline for the projects for ETSI and regarding the public inquiry situation.
Yeah, thank you. This is the timeline or the deadlines that are applicable for based on the ETSI life cycle of standard development, and I will give you after that for each of the vertical standards the status, so that you can get, based on your profile, get orientation when you can participate or you can implement as a pilot, even using a draft or follow it. Normally the cycle is like by December we should have had the mature drafts of all the standards, and then open consultation is running for most of them. Several cycles of comment and resolutions and refinement of the standards are undergoing. You'll hear some examples after that with the rapporteurs where they stay. And normally from the 1st of July, that should be, so we should have by the end of this month, final drafts, not mature drafts, final drafts for public inquiry. And so those are consolidated versions already. And they will go for public inquiry through the national members of the Senelec and ETSI. So those are national standardization bodies usually. When we receive and have comments resolution, the final vote will be on by the end of the year or early January. For that, and publication in January 27. For most of them, we are scheduled, and I will update you after that. Okay.
Thank you, George. Maybe this is worth to put a message also from the European standardization bodies. The public inquiry is important. Yes. This is the point where the national standardization bodies, so of course also the Romanian, has the chance to comment through its national standardization body. So this is quite a crucial point to address all kinds of comments. First of all, of course, the technical comments, because afterwards this will be treated in a resolution period. And once we come to the final vote, the documents, I might speak more or less for Senelec, you can still submit technical comments, but they will not be treated anymore. This is the closing procedure. So the very important one is the public inquiry in that drafting process. But of course, at the beginning also, which has currently closed as of April this year, the open consultation on those ones. But in the drafting process, as usual in the standardization process, it's the public inquiry, which is the first real public commenting touch point. So mark it in your calendars, follow the activities, and if you want and have to comment, then you are warmly invited to do this. Yes, this is an overview on the Sentinel-like verticals and where they are. It's a bit small, so I will mainly give you the message of the matrix itself. Everything what is green is good, as usual. So I'm happy to say that for these verticals, so we have 3 verticals, and those from the ENIC are supporting to the verticals. We have closed the public inquiry already, and we are working on the comment, or the experts in the corporators are working on the comments resolution to progress to the formal vote, which what we call the formal vote, which is in the end the final stage of the drafting process before it gets to the publication period. That's for the upper part of the matrix. Then, of course, we have a few trains, a few projects which are related to the other ones on top. So they have started, but they have not reached the same status. So here, as a message again, this would be then as of inquiry the chance to have the commenting from the NSBs. Or of course, we invite you to join the activities at any kind of stage through your NSBs and to participate also in the work. We always welcome experts. We always need experts that can help to process to the publication state in the end, which is all our goal of all of us. The second part, and then you see already it's a bit spread. We have a few which are just before public inquiry. So we have a TC224 18330 project on similar device secure elements, which has closed on the public inquiry, which is working on the resolution to move forward on the formal vote. This is the third line here. And the other work on the verticals has either started or has completed the first stage, but as a message will then go to inquiry. The next one is the overview on the ETSI standards. I think, George, you will anyway
shortly. First of all, just I wanted to comment before overview of the status is that verticals and horizontals, the idea was that, and we've tried to follow that, the verticals and horizontals to be synchronized, and also cross verticals to have similar template and logic in it. And there is a strong, since a lot of you, well, you see cyber physical products are mainly in the area of Sensenelec, while here at ETSI we have mostly software, but this is not true, and different levels of software. And one important deadline that comes out from the CRA is in action. It's not December 27, but it is 9/11 this year. So 11 of September, where we have this vulnerability reporting disclosure in the framework of CVD as well, European EUVD. And this is mostly related to software components that are there, and the major tool there is SBOM. So you have these definitions that are in 40,123. I think it's related to vulnerability, and it's good even if before it becomes in force that you follow that, because that will reflect the work in all these other compliance of vertical that I'm saying now. So you see, it's like the browsers, password managers, antivirus. They are in password managers are in a public inquiry already. And they're in quite advanced stage. So we have final drafts for all, and we've fulfilled the deadline that I showed before, with a little delay of network functions and telecommunication, telecoms, but network management systems are, as a final draft. So with this remark, and they're openly available, all these standards, so you can read and also contribute to your national standardization body for the public inquiry so that they become practically applicable to your work. Thank you.
That is indeed true for the ETSI standards. For the Sensenelec ones, the versions are available through the NSBs. Maybe also to have a message here at the end after the metrics on the work progress. The horizontals are close to finalization. This is already a very first good message. The verticals are closely following. So the combination of the use of two is at least on a good track. We have here between Sensenelec and ETSI always a bit splits in the progress. Of course, ETSI is working with one TC and one working group. It's in a coordinated manner of issuing also batches, while we have to also in a coordinated manner, but maybe more the challenge to put and align the activities of the different TCs that we have. But in overall, I think with the coordination of the rapporteur work in support with the projects that we have, I think we have found a good system to coordinate and then go alongside the timeline. The next one is again for you, George.
Yeah, this is what I said. I mean, it's where you can see on the website open area where you can find all the drafts for consultation. So please have a look before they go for public even inquiry so that you can prepare. And also one thing I forgot to mention about especially those verticals developed by ETSI. Not only that we try to follow the same template, but you will see most of those security products, security related or network access products, they would have the same or similar logic. So once you study in your ecosystem, whatever it is, so you'll have several of them. So those will be different standards. However, when you look at them, you'll see the similar logic, the similar controls and everything. So it will be easier for you. And in addition to that, especially at ETSI, we will develop, and that's what we do with ETSI, with all the standards, technical reports or guidelines for implementation that will facilitate, and we'll try with the Digital SME Alliance and SBS to do specific guidelines for SMEs that you do step-by-step introduction. Thank you.
Thank you again. Maybe I highlight the QR code here, which give indeed the access to the standards subpage at ETSI. I guess you have all used the opportunity to have a picture of this. Otherwise, we will share the slides afterwards, and of course, we will provide the link on request. Yes, this is more or less the overview on the work program itself. On the CRA standards unlock tour, we already had an overview from Nick at the beginning, where we have been, now here where we will be. The next stop is in Portugal, in Lisbon on 17th of September. This one will followed by a visit of The Hague on 1st of October. And this is not correct here. I can but tell you it will be Bonn for the 7th of October. And more or less closing the activities for this year. The objectives of these meetings are pretty clear. Closer with the potential stakeholders, provide information to the involved industry and community, and give direct interaction with rapporteurs and the real European commissioners with the European standardization bodies, and yes, to leverage the collaboration with other EU-funded projects that we will hear later about, of course. Yes, George, please.
Yeah, one addition there, since I'm based in Sofia in Bulgaria and run European Software Institute and Cybersecurity Lab there. So we do plan eventually by mid or end of November to have another tour in Sofia nearby. Welcome there.
Okay. This is again the overview of yes, the plans and the recent trips. Maybe I close with some additional resources. We have a webpage for the Stanford CR projects. This is where you find details also on the different lines projects of the technical work on the development of the standards, where you find the work program and hopefully gives you all missing information that you might have missed today. Yes, and then we are always open for questions if they are, and thank you very much for your attention. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, so thank you very much. What I suggest we do, because we're running a little over time, is if you have any questions, then you can grab Eve and George, also Laura, Federica, Bruno, and Christian, who all work on the standards. I'm sorry, Alan and Rose as well. So all these people over here are working on the standards. So if you have any questions, you grab them. Bruno and Christian will also be presenting later. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed the break. So now we are going to move into two sessions looking at the landscape. So first of all, we'll be looking at the cybersecurity landscape, and we have three presentations coming up on that from different players in the cybersecurity landscape, and then we'll be moving to a panel on the industrial landscape as well, to see how the CRA will impact, as we said at the beginning, and when Anna Maria's presentation was very nice, these different layers from EU to national, right down to covering different aspects and impacting on cybersecurity, the way cybersecurity is done and the way that it impacts industry in Europe. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Lushan Fatou from the Euro-Atlantic Resilience Centre, and he's the president of the Euro-Atlantic Resilience Centre. So he'll be giving a perspective. So over to you, Lushan.
Thank you, Nicholas. Good morning, everyone, and my gratitude goes to the organizers for this event, and my congratulations to the participants. I will try to give you a brief overview from the perspective of the center I'm representing, and to put us into frame, we are a legal person under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but we do not do foreign policy. We work on resilience-related issues from a conceptual as well as from a operational point of view, in cooperation with the institutions that are mandated especially to that. So from this perspective, I would like to very briefly point out five messages, five considerations, looking at the issue and also looking at the distinguished audience. I would start by saying that the Cyber Resilience Act is important, as was mentioned already, because it shifts the cybersecurity further upstream. So it goes towards design, development, maintenance, accountability across the whole product life cycle. The legislation we are debating is underlying message, has a very simple underlying message. Europe can no longer afford insecure products with digital elements to become normal market practice. The CRA therefore serves not only consumers and institutions, but also credibility of the European digital market. It further makes the EU safer and more prosperous with a resilience critical infrastructure. So my first point, my first message is that if European market allowed vulnerable products through design that allows such vulnerabilities, then the vulnerabilities becomes systemic. Therefore, cybersecurity can no longer be separated from the quality of the product and from the market confidence. Secondly, what the CRA asks for in practice. So at heart, the CRA promotes secure by design and secure by default approach, as you have seen. This is especially important in a market where vulnerabilities in one product can ripple through supply chains, services, and public trust. Europe is therefore setting a baseline. Innovation must be accompanied by responsibility. So my second point is that this regulation, this set of regulations, this framework pushes companies towards a culture of responsibility, of ongoing accountability, not only to a formal checklist before going on the market. So this applies to larger companies as well as to SMEs. Thirdly, looking from the SMEs or looking at the SMEs angle, if I may be allowed, I would say that the real question in our assessment for SMEs is how the CRA can be implemented in a way that is realistic, proportionate, and useful. The right ambition to turn compliance into capability and, where possible, into competitive advantage is the goal. Therefore, I believe SMEs need clear standards, understandable guidance, practical tools, and opportunities to be heard during consultations. If implementation is too abstract, only large actors will benefit fully. If implementation is practical, the whole ecosystem becomes stronger. Therefore, my third point is the SMEs should not be regarded or should not regard themselves as a weak link, but as an essential component of the innovation ecosystem. The regulation recognizes a need to avoid disproportionate burdens. And in the evaluation, in the conformity evaluation, takes into account the dimension of the company, of the enterprise. So standards and instruments of conformity should be accessible, not reserved to the great players. Fourthly, looking at standards and consultations. It is vital that these consultations lead to the establishment and to the implementation of standards. This can make the CRA compliance more coherent, more predictable, and more feasible for all market actors. This is why consultations with SMEs are so valuable. They help ensure that the eventual framework is not only rigorous, but also feasible. A resilient regulatory ecosystem listens before it instructs. So my message, my submission to you is that the European standardization process associated with the CRA that is ongoing under the coordination of the European relevant institutions has to make clear that harmonized standards will provide the presumption of conformity and will transform the general requirements into applicable standards. This is where the consultations with SMEs are crucial, because a good rule on paper can fail if it is not implemented in practice. And finally, I would like to offer the example of the center I'm representing. One of our most impactful programs was working within a European project under the management of the Constanța Maritime University, and I salute here Professor Nicu Iancu. That was the strengthening the synergies in defense and civilian cybersecurity, eCybridge. This program outlined the philosophy that the current legislation is based on, and that is cooperation, synergy, development of compatibility between partners. In that case, civilian and military participants in cybersecurity and ensuring the society continuity, which is one of the baseline requirements under NATO. So this is exactly the bridge that Europe needs more often between strategic thinking and implementation, between public institutions and practitioners, and between resilience policy and operational learning. And my final message, my final, I would say, contribution to you is that European resilience is not built through norms, but through institutional bridges, through professional cooperation between communities that needs to come together in times of crisis. And being in this hall with this audience and under the auspices of the Romanian legislative body, I would say that it is clear that if resilience is a team effort, then this room is already part of the answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucian. That was a very nice message I think you've given in terms of the importance of the standards and the importance of collaboration and alignment between the different institutions. And as you said today, the audience that we have here and especially the agenda really represents that and Romania's commitment to this type of dialogue. So from a European perspective now, I'd like to welcome Panagiotis Marzalas. You have to excuse my terrible pronunciation, who's from the European Cybersecurity Centre, which of course is based here in Bucharest. So Panagiotis, over to you. Yes, of course, yes, sorry. Yes.
So what a great pass from the Ambassador Fatu. Thank you. What we're building here is a digital governance, and the digital governance, it needs its sister, which is cybersecurity, because we cannot afford to have buses driving around without a driver and without being secure. So let me show what we do in the European cybersecurity, but a few words about also the CRA from our point of view. I don't want to step on any toes of EU Commission, but just a few short bullets, about the CRA. So why the CRA exists? So as the previous said, the cost to poor software and hardware security is very high because of ransomware, supply chain attacks, unpatched devices, etc. So there was no EU-wide baseline cybersecurity requirement for connected products before sale. Therefore, the EU, to increase the level of cybersecurity, introduced the first horizontal cross-sector cybersecurity law for hardware and software in the EU. So the CRA for products with digital elements hardware and software included connected remote data services, applies to manufacturers, importers, and distributors. Of course, there are some key exclusions, you know, that we mentioned before about medical devices, security agencies, aviations, etc. So here we can see the stack of the 3 tiers of the CRA, the default, the important, and the critical, that they are defined. So the baseline is security by design, security by default, across the full product lifecycle. So in the default level, is just a self-assessment is enough. Then in the important, we have the stricter conformity assessment, and in the critical products, there is a third-party certification that is required. So in the ECCC, we have created, we have funded products to support the CRA implementation. So more than 700 stakeholders, including a strong SME community, have already been engaged in CRA awareness, training, and standardization activities like the Cyberstand EU. More than 5 million is being channeled directly to SMEs to strengthen cyber resilience and prepare for Cyber Resilience Act compliance. Networks of NCCs and European Digital Innovation Hubs are working together to ensure support, that the support reaches the companies across the Union, like it is done by the Secure project. We have companies that already assess their products, that the products fall under the CRA obligations through publicly available compliance tools, while automated compliance wizards are being developed to guide organizations throughout the entire compliance journey, like the products of Cracovie and CRA AI, where we can see the banner over there. Open source and SME-focused toolkits, and they are delivering automated self-assessment vulnerability management, SBOM generation, and compliance documentation capabilities, significantly reducing the cost and complexity of compliance for smaller companies, like it is done from the project Octet, Oscrat, Confirmate, and CRASI. Advanced compliance services are being developed to support vulnerability testing, risk management, maturity assessment, and conformity assessment throughout the product lifecycle, like it is done from the Curium and the Cyberfort projects. Artificial intelligence is increasingly being used to automate compliance verification, secure code analysis, vulnerability reports, and technical documentation, helping organizations maintain compliance more efficiently. CRA AI. And new platforms are being prepared to support market surveillance authorities, notifying bodies and certification actors in supervising and enforcing the CRA consistently across Europe. And this is done, the product is from the Detangled, Cyberbits, and CTIS for NIS. So here I would like to show you that the EU digital regulation stack. Many would think that the CRA is just another regulation of the EU, but as we see is the foundations. And this stack, which is the CRA, the NIS2, the GDPR, and the A Act on top, we can read it like this. So the CRA secures the products at the foundation. The NIS2 secures the organizations operating on top of those products. The GDPR protects the personal data those organizations process, and the AI Act governs the AI systems built using that data. So for all these projects, the European Cybersecurity Competence Center have made 4 calls. The DEP 4 for the EU legislation, the DEP 6 for compliant CRA and strengthened CRA, and the DEP 7, the second topic for cybersecurity 02. So for all these products, we have distributed almost 83 million euros to to SMEs, national entities and other organizations to produce the products that will help the rest of the market to pick up and be able to go through the standardization project. So that was from my side. Thank you very much. We have a website. I'm pretty sure that most of you have got funding from us, but the ones who haven't, you can visit our website, the funding opportunities, and you can see there what calls we are advertising every now and then. If you have something on research and innovation, it is basically on Horizon Europe. And if you have an idea that is on development and deployment, this is the most important. We don't just want ideas to be from research to the library. We want the ideas from research to go into the market. So please apply and we'll be happy to fund your idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Panagiotis. And you'll see presentations this afternoon on some of those projects that you mentioned. And actually, for the first time, we'll have a set of demos from, I think, 5 of the projects, which is the first time this has happened because the projects are moving on and developing, so getting nearer to final versions of these compliance tools. And clearly, the funding from the Digital Europe program is very important for as an implementation, a form of implementation for the Act. Okay, so I move on now to our next speaker, who's sitting next to me, which is Gabriel Dinu, and he's the Deputy Director of the National Cybersecurity Directorate of Romania. So over to you, Gabriel.
Thank you. Very nice to meet you today. I would like to make a few considerations regarding the importance of CRA for the national products with digital elements market, and also regarding our work as a cybersecurity authority. So, of course, it's like one of the talks of the moment, the ones regarding the security of supply chain and the resilience of the products with digital elements. It is an extremely important topic right now. So we've crossed the line between discussing if cybersecurity is a good practice, and we are now talking about the way that we can actually prove that the products are cyber resilient enough to be placed on the market in the European Union. And at this point, I believe that for SMEs especially, this is a very important topic if they want to maintain their competitivity and to actually have a place on the market. So, of course, there are a lot of challenges like limited compliance capacity, limited product security teams, limited documentation maturity, and of course, limited negotiation powers with the suppliers. But there's also an opportunity because being CRA ready can be a very important market differentiator. And of course, as an SME, we have to start from a few practical questions like what are the products with digital elements that you want to place on the EU market? Are you a manufacturer, importer, distributor, software developer, or maybe you're an integrator of or open source steward? Also, the products, are they default, important, or critical under the CRA? Do you have a secure development lifecycle? Are you able to produce technical documentation? Can you handle the vulnerabilities, the patches, and the updates, and also the user communication? Can you report actively exploited vulnerabilities and severe incidents within the CRA deadlines. Also, regarding the reporting obligations, it's been said before that starting from 11th of September, the manufacturers must report the actively exploited vulnerabilities and the severe incidents. So, of course, there will also be the conformity assessment, and it's been talked about previously. So, what is important and what we are going to prioritize as an authority. So, clear guidance before enforcement pressure, it's a priority from our concern. Risk-based supervision, proportional expectations from SMEs, corrective action before restrictive actions, and strong actions where products create significant cybersecurity risk or the operators fail to cooperate. And this is one of the principles that we are working with as an authority since we've started since actually we've been created as an authority. Also, what is important to understand that the CRA creates opportunities for the ecosystem because there will be demand for new capabilities, such as secure software development, product security engineering, vulnerability management, software bills of materials, and supply chain transparency, security testing and validation, conformity assessment expertise, legal, technical, and operational compliance advisory, trainings for developers, product managers, and executives. So the CRA is not just a regulation, it is also an opportunity, not only for the manufacturers, it's an opportunity for an entire ecosystem that is going to grow in order to support needs of the market. So, of course, as long as we manage to comply with the requirements, the SMEs will benefit from access to the EU markets. We will benefit also from more trusted local products, a stronger participation in the supply chain, growth of testing, certification, and advisory services, better cooperation between authorities, industry, academia, and research, because we can't do it together, and I will get back to that. But there are also the challenges, which are the cost of compliance, the limits of notified bodies, the shortage of product security expertise, the complex software supply chains, the clarity of the guidance. So we still have a little time until 2027, but counting what we need to do, it's actually not much. So for us, the priorities are to build a predictable implementation framework, to support competent conformity assessment capacity, to create practical guidance for SMEs and startups, and to coordinate with CSIRTs and ESA and other member states to promote secure by design practices across the ecosystem, and to use the enforcement proportionally, but decisively also. And also, I want to share with you the fact that we started working with volunteers, with experts from the market, and we're launching. I'm using this opportunity to also launch this invitation for experts to cooperate with us in order to develop together this national framework that we have to put in place, as I said, in a very short time. And I want to give a couple of closing messages, and to say that this is a common responsibility as an ecosystem, and it is not just a requirement that we need to comply with. It is also a possibility to create new opportunities, as I said before. It is also, in my opinion, an opportunity for generating more competitiveness on the EU and not only the EU market. It will also create more public trust in product security, and the message for the ecosystem, not only the SMEs, but especially the SMEs, is to start early, document the build, know your role, know your product category, prepare your vulnerability handling process, use all the available support, and you can find support on from the Commission, from the bodies that create the standards, ENISA also, and us as an authority. Also, there are a lot of financing opportunities from the ECCC. Also, to treat compliance as a path to generate stronger products, not just the paperwork. And to keep in mind, as I said before, that this can be used as a market advantage even before the deadline from 2027. So be prepared. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. So that's a nice lead into the next session, which is a panel on industry perspectives. Before we move on, though, I wondered if there were any questions from anybody in the room. Okay, one comment that we've had online is that many people, many SMEs, many businesses still don't really know about the CRA and don't know enough information about it. So in general, they're quite unprepared for it. This is one of the comments we've had online. So with this thought, I'd like to welcome the panelists for the next session, which, as I said, will look at challenges from an industrial perspective. And our chair, Ayman Aldahash, who's from Innovex, which is an important accelerator for startups and small businesses, and he'll be chairing the session. I'd also like to introduce Alina Banica from the Romanian Standardization Organization, Robert Similea from the National Council of Private, Small and Medium Enterprises in Romania, Leinu Costin, I'm really sorry about my pronunciation, who's the president of the Wallachia eHub Digitalization Center, which is, of course, one of the many European digital innovation hubs around Europe and also around Romania, and also Alexandru Bobe, who's from City on a Hub, which is another of the European digital innovation hubs. And these are essential hubs for actually reaching out to local SME communities and introducing various resources and funding and sandboxes for testing different technologies, not just cybersecurity, but in other fields which the Digital Europe program covers. So with that, I hand over to you, Ayman.
Thank you, Nicholas. Your Romania is getting better by the hour, I would say. And one small disclaimer, unfortunately, Mr. Bobe will not be able to join us for today. He had an unplanned session, he announced us. And we do hope to benefit of his valuable insights for our next session. So welcome everybody. As Nicholas was mentioning, the scope of this panel is to further refine the excellent insights that were shared in the previous session, this time on the industry angle. So essentially what we're looking to do here with our speakers is to bring a more practical angle on how to tackle these topics, from the standardization adoption, from the adoption and change management, all the way to the impact on SMEs, because SMEs have been quite top of mind up until now in all these sessions. Those being said, and sticking a bit to the SMEs, I would actually start with this topic and hand over to Robert to comment a bit on this. Robert has many hats. One of them, I would say, it's let's say so his official role is, let me see if I remember it. So lead for SME onboarding and integration into Raw AI Factory on behalf of IMM Romania.
Yes, indeed.
Quite a mouthful. And one of the other hats that Robert has is that of an educational methodology expert. So essentially, he's focused on designing and implementing national strategies that would essentially help advance the entrepreneurship education in Romania with the end goal of, having a societal shift on everything related to green digital transformation and, of course, increase the AI literacy. The organization that you're representing today, Robert, IMM Romania, is in itself representing approximately 65,000.
Yeah,
Yes.
65,000 SMEs.
SMEs, exactly, which translates further to tens of thousands of entrepreneurs and almost 500,000 employees.
Yes.
If I remember correctly. And IMM Romania has two main instruments on measuring, the realities of Romanian SMEs. First being the White Charter, Carta Albă, and the newer IMM Digital Index.
Yes, I have some
yes
physical
the shining
trends. Yes, the last one.
So, Robert, the first question, which I believe would be super relevant to this particular panel, would be for product security regulation like CRA. How many SMEs are prepared?
For a CRA, yes?
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, I want to start saying that I feel much better hearing so many speakers talking about the SMEs. So that means I have something important. I can add more value to the discussion. Then I want to congratulate the organizers. This is an important event, and the moment is very important because we are in the middle of the transition toward a digital society and economy. So, as you said, I represent the voice of over 65,000 SMEs from Romania. So I want to give you some ideas about what an SME means in Romania. So when we say small and medium companies, I mean really small. Most of our members have between 1 and 5 employees. So our role is to represent these tens of thousands of entrepreneurs to raise their awareness and to help them understand and comply to the regulations. So I bring to you the genuine reality from the ground, because the most voices in the panel speak for the supply side. As standard bodies, innovation hubs, accelerators, I speak for the demand. The SMEs that actually have to comply to the regulations. So when I started to prepare this panel, I spoke with our legal team and I look for members and associations that are in scope of CRA. I think today I will speak less and I will listen more, because I think my role is to take the knowledge and the point of view from my distinguished speakers here and to translate in a more accessible language to our SMEs. I will go to the SMEs Romania roots, the data from our reports, having here. So the digital index gives a precise and paradoxical answer.
When we ask Romanian SMEs what stops them from going digital, cybersecurity comes only fourth at 28%. Ahead of it are the cost of software and hardware at 68%, lack of financing at 40%, and the skills gap at 30%. So if we stop here, we might conclude that SMEs don't take cybersecurity seriously. But when we ask about risk instead of barriers, the picture flips. Because data security becomes their #1 concern at 60%. Data loss comes right after at 47%. And when we ask about their digital priorities for a year ahead, cybersecurity comes second at 49%, just behind process automation. So the same entrepreneur who puts security fourth as a barrier put it first as a risk and second as a priority. And I don't see this as a contradiction. It is a sign of capacity, not an attitude. It's not a mindset. SMEs know security matters, and they understand the risk, and they lack the means to act. So, to sum up, Romanian SMEs have the basic technical side of security because about 83% of our respondents use software as antiviruses and passwords, but the CRA asks for something completely different. Security built into the product and keep up across its whole life. On that, readiness is very low. So I have to be brutally honest with you. Not because Finns don't care, but because they don't have the capacity and the know-how. So that's why we strongly believe that we need skills, we need funding, we need to share tools, and we need standards that fit for a 5-person firms, not for the big ones.
Thank you, Robert, and stay tuned because we will definitely revisit this topic on SMEs. I will complement this a bit by turning now with Alina. To Alina, hello. Alina is a standardization expert at ASRO, that is the Romanian Standards Association, and essentially, this is the sole standardization body in Romania, and they are focused on adopting, developing, and also disseminating standards across the whole of Romania's stakeholders, ranging from the industry to the government to academia to the consumers and certification bodies. And Alina's role within with this organization is super important, as she's working across these stakeholders, essentially to help them reach out a common framework, I would put it, that would translate to faster adoption and putting into real life practice these frameworks. And this is also reflected by ASRO's two main lenses, one being the management and the administration of the Romanian standards, but also the portfolio of standardization related services, ranging from sales distribution all the way to professional services and accreditations. So this brings me to my question to you, Alina. From your vantage point in ASRO, how would you define as the largest gap when it comes to awareness or capability of the Romanian entities when it comes to the CRA?
When we look at Romanian companies, the biggest gaps are not financial. They are about responsibility, skills, and priorities. First, many companies, especially the medium-sized enterprises, still don't have a clear person responsible for standards-based cybersecurity. And under the Cyber Resilient Act, that role becomes a legal obligation and not a nice to have. Second, there is a capability gap. Knowing that a standard exists is not the same as being able to apply it. We lack enough engineers who understand both the product and the standard well enough to support a conformity assessment. Third, the supply chain remains a weak point. Many products will include third-party components without the proper SBM, which is the software bills of materials. Essentially an ingredient list of all the software components. Without an SBM, you cannot manage vulnerabilities or meet the CRA reporting deadlines. And finally, the real constraint is time. Companies are already dealing with NIS2 and with GDPR. CRA adds another layer without a structured approach, teams will become overwhelmed. This is where ASRO plays a key role, providing access to standards, to national mirror committees, and to training that helps companies use one coherent framework instead of 3 separate efforts.
Thank you, Alina. So if I understand correctly what you're mentioning, there is no single area where there is this gap, but it's spread across technical resource constraints, supply chain, and everything in between.
Yes.
Okay, that's quite a challenge. Okay, so let's zoom in a bit on someone who is working closer with some companies that are definitely impacted. And I have the pleasure of addressing my next question to Mr. Costin Lianu, President and Coordinator at Valahia eHub. Costin, you're leading the European Digital Innovation Hub designated for Muntenia South and Bucharest Ilfov regions. And essentially your Valahia eHub acts like a one-stop shop for SME startups and not only, that are looking to strengthen essentially their digital transformation capabilities. And I would summarize based on what I saw also in your description that you're focused on four main areas, so to speak. One being digitization and audit, then skilling and training, the so-called technological radar, the test before invest model, and also access to funding in simple terms. So looking at the broader scope, because what I got so far is that for a small or medium-sized company to properly and practically adopt and implement CRA would be quite a challenge. And to simplify this, aligning and attaching to everything that was shared up until now, it's becoming more and more clear that this is far beyond company-to-company collaboration. So essentially, my question would be, what kind of collaboration would be needed on a broader scale, as you see it from your expertise, in order to make this a more practical and tangible topic?
Thank you very much. So it's a very interesting subject, and we attach very much importance to the idea of compliance in the area of security. And here we have not only CRA, but also we have NIS2, and we can divide the companies in the region, companies which are focused more on NIS2, companies which are focused on, should be focused on CRA, and I clearly endorse the point of view of my colleague in the panel that still many SMEs do not have this awareness about the importance of these new regulations. And also there is let's say, a group which is mixed, which needs also NIS2 and CRA. So that's from the beginning, we have to bring together all these actors. And the main, let's say, critical issue is how to take them on board. So we have We had 122 SMEs in the last enrollment of beneficiaries, the ones which has been benefiting from public funds. But we also create awareness for the others which do not have this facility, access to this facility. And of course, what is clear for us that we have to come with specific tools to address the situation existing in the region. And that means, for example, cooperation. We try to shape out a sandbox related to compliance, and because sandbox can be conceived as a compliance sandbox or product liability and product sandbox. So we can address to both within this sandbox, and that will be the answer to the question how to do it. So we have to work in the ecosystem. We are ecosystem managers. We are facilitators. Valahia Hub is a consortium by itself. It has also companies in the area which are more advanced in understanding because they are in the security business, like software developers. But also there are companies which are not related to this too much. So we have different organizations from the national organization. We have universities. We have also research institutes, we have associations, we have clusters. So the idea of us is to upgrade what we have already, as we call it Valahia Hub Accelerator, which is a common place for beneficiaries, non-beneficiaries, suppliers of services or beneficiaries of services. The offer and the demand is there together, and to upgrade this to a sandbox.
Excellent. And I will stay a bit on this point and also give the perspective of ASO when it comes to this, on harmonizing the European standards and translating them into practical measures that an impacted company can actually prove that they are meeting the standard. Apologies. During a conformity assessment.
Well, the Cyber Resilient Act tells you what must be achieved. Harmonized standards tell you how to achieve it in a language that engineers, auditors, and notified bodies can all work with. When a harmonized standard is cited in the official journal, applying it gives manufacturers a clear, audible path to demonstrate conformity. It replaces guesswork with a repeatable, recognized method. For technical measures, standards like N18031 turn broad cybersecurity goals, network protection, access control, secure updates into concrete test cases that go directly into a technical file. And this is important. The new CRA standards are being developed right now under the European Commission standardization request M606, which means the technical content is still being shaped, and companies that participate early gain a real advantage. For organizational measures, standards as ISO IEC 29147 and ISO IEC 30111 define how vulnerabilities are received, triaged, and resolved, and what evidence must exist to prove the process works. And for secure development, IEC 6244341 provides structure for designing, testing, and maintaining secure products, including SBM practices required by RRCA. ASRO's role is to make this translation accessible. We adopt these standards nationally, we host the mirror committees, and we help industry understand which standard maps to which CRA obligation.
Thank you. And Costin, getting back to you on how to transform the CRA into an opportunity rather than, a burden. rather than an operational cost. How do you envision this model on how an impacted company can actually leverage this one to get ahead a bit of their competition and to access even new markets?
Some years ago, I have been coordinating the national export strategy of Romania, and I think the most important thing right now is to address to the companies which they will need that compliance in their business, daily business, and these are the outsourcers. The outsourcing market in Romania is about 10 billion euros. Most of the outsourcing companies are in our region, at maybe 40%. So we speak about thousands of companies. From these thousands of companies, there are 300 or 400 companies which are end-to-end solutions. So they will need immediately CRA. So because they have to comply and they are the brand to sell in the market. So these pure outsourcing end-to-end solutions are the target group which we have to address first. And then based on their success stories, we have to address to the other groups. The other groups are the outsourcers which are not end-to-end solutions, but they aspire to be outsourced. So I give you Wheatpad or Bitdefender, they are end-to-end solutions. They sell their products with their own brand, but they have also these aspiring companies. So this group of companies, also the manufacturers, are, I think, the first ones to be relevant because they will have to integrate this into their export passport. So without that, they cannot do the business. And then we hope that based on that, knowledge, the aspiring managers which will want to introduce the product into the market will follow, because this will happen by, let's say, through our efforts, but also organically from the market once it has been triggered.
Yes, yes, and this is like on the example that you mentioned on Bitdefender and the UiPath. Definitely, there is a very interesting discussion there, and I would bring also the other complement SMEs and get back to Robert. Robert, with those being said, do you see some risk that SMEs impacted by the CRA would actually strip away those features under the CRA scope, just not to bother, you know, with all the auditing and everything in between?
So I said before that 3 in 4 SMEs have from 1 up to 5 employees. In the same time, the vast majority are digital users, not makers, so not developers of digital products. Watching our report, I saw that only about 22% of the SMEs even sell online, comparing with 2018 on only 2% used to sell online. So this is a huge step. Coming back to your question, so I think the challenge is on finding the group most likely to be in scope without knowing it. So this is the big challenge. For them, the first barrier is not compliance, but it is knowing they are in scope at all. Because you cannot prepare for a duty if you don't know you carry that duty. So yes, I think we would call this risk compliance avoidance through de-digitalization. So I see this risk to many SMEs because the SMEs are very agile. So our data show it is plausible, this risk, because 56% of our members run no digital project at all in the past 3 years, and 78% had no digital collaboration of any kind. Adoption is cautious, isolated, and mostly driven by impact, and that's why most SMEs go digital where there is an immediate gain or where the law forces them to do it. So I see this as a pattern of adoption under pressure and resistance when the cost-benefit turns negative. That's why I think that these small companies start removing features to stay out of scope. So this is the real risk. I think it is a signal that the road to compliance was designed in a way that doesn't fit to them, as I said before. So I think we need to design these regulations to fit to small companies. A well-designed rule makes the safe choice the easy choice. A badly designed one makes the least innovative product the safest legal option. So the answer is not to scare firms into compliance with the threat of big fines. Fear doesn't build capacity. Fear builds only avoidance.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Robert. And looking also at the time, I would invite each one of you to give a very short key takeaway to the audience, both here in person and online, at your choosing. Either one single action they can take even tomorrow, or just get educated on the end-to-end journey, or what programs and incentives they have at their disposal, or how your individual organization can actually help them. Starting with Alina, then with Costina.
Well, if an SME could do one thing tomorrow, it should not be certification, it should not be hiring a consultant. It should create one page map, a simple map that answers a few questions, 3 questions. What does my product do? Does it connect to a network? Does it process personal data? Does it receive remote updates? Each yes links to a CRA essential requirement. Second, which CRA Annex 1 requirements apply? This shows what the company must demonstrate and whether the product falls under default, important, or critical categories. Which standard covers most of 3 requirements? It might be N18031, IAC 62443, ETSI 303645, or a combination. The map reveals the right direction. This map is the foundation. It prevents company from choosing the wrong certification path, and it forces them to read the regulations and the standard together, not separately. And here is something many SMEs don't realize. Joining an ASRO technical committee often costs less than a single day of external consulting, but gives you early access to the standards being developed under M606 and a direct seat at the table where requirements are shaped. The SMEs that will struggle with CRA are not the ones that start late. They are the ones that start without a real map.
Yes, we missed one service in our digital hub, which is a service which is given by many others. It's organization, European organization, national, regional, it's networking. So now I think networking it's key, because based on our experience, if the networking is functioning, then you have both awareness, both skills, both test before invest, everything it's more clear for the participants, and they get knowledge, common knowledge. They create communities of practice. So this is, I think, networking the networks, and how you can put your network to work in the region, in our region. It's essential for CRA and for many other activities related to digital transformation.
So I continue my last idea. The answer is to make the compliant path cheaper and clearer. Cheaper and clearer than the avoidance path. Standards that an SME can read, understand, and apply without a dedicated security team. It's what we talked before the panel, because an SME and a small entrepreneur is also a plumber, an electrician, bodyguard, and everything. So we need those this path to be ready-made, predictable funding, so compliance is an investment and not a financial shock. So we need to do this right. That means simple, transparent, and clear to the small producer, because the test of this regulation is not whether big firms comply, because they will comply. It is whether the smallest firm can, whether it is able to do it. And for this, we need three things. So first, we need that standards to be fitted to the size of the firm. As I said, so a smaller producer doesn't have to comply the same way as a big company with an army of lawyers and specialists and experts. Second, we need shared capacity through association, and I'm glad that we connected today. And I saw hope today because I saw many people involved in this. And third, we need predictable fundings. So I saw also some people discussing about this support. So that's why I can end my speech saying that I really see hope for SMEs.
I see also. And Robert, Costin, and Alina, thank you so much. On behalf of the organizers, your insights was super appreciated, I can tell you already. And Nicholas, back to you. With encouragement to everyone to connect during the network session with our panelists.
Thank you very much. That was great. Excellent. So three key perspectives and some key messaging, in particular from Alina, around, you know, the competitive advantage for an SME in participating in the standards process. So I'll quickly move to the next session, where we'll be hearing from the standards experts who are driving forward the standards. And, you know, it's very important that there is awareness raising, but also discussion around the standards. So I'll first hand over to Bruno Banelli, who will talk about routers. So Bruno is an Etsy ambassador and rapporteur for Etsy cybersecurity, and he's a very important person in terms of these workshops, as well as he hosted the very first one back in January in Croatia. So Bruno, he'll be also joined by Christian Horsert, who's been at virtually all of our events, and he'll be focusing on boot managers as well. So two very important people speaking now. So over to you first, Bruno.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can all hear me. My name is Bruno Banelli, and I'm EN 30467 rapporteur. I'm a little less important than Nick gave me importance, but I really do appreciate it. The work that was done in the Etsy for all of the verticals was a joint effort and a joint work, and it would be completely impossible with both Etsy support and all of the working groups that have been participating. So for today, as it was announced, I will be telling you much more about EN 304.627, which basically covers routers, modems, and switches. Why this vertical is quite important, because these devices, as you probably know, are the ones that are actually the gatekeepers. They both allow us to be connected to the internet, and they allow us to be connected amongst each other through various forms of local networks. That being said, the European Commission made the right decision to classify this product as an important product. Thus, it has an appropriate vertical of its own. So, in order to cover it in a proper way, there should be an efficient threat landscape that will explain to the manufacturer how and what needs to be covered within the device, regardless what type of device it is, in order to cover it under the vertical. So I tried to break it into 4 boxes which can be aggregated together. Of course, taking into consideration unpatched flaws and hidden components, various options for crashes, outages, and botnet attacks, which should be prevented in order that the device has sufficient availability, various options for preventing the hijacking management, and of course, since we are talking about routers and switches, be particularly mindful about intercepted and rerouted traffic. You have heard, oh, sorry, you have heard much about the Cyber Resilience Act, but I tried to draw just few very, very important dates. So 2 of these dates in the presentation are in the past, and we should probably focus on the 2 in the future. First one is 11th of September of this year, when vulnerability and incident reporting obligation shall begin. So this is that single reporting platform that will soon come to each and every of your certs, if I'm not mistaken, and they will distribute the information to the SMEs where appropriate. And of course, in December of next year, the full obligation that will be applied to the products on the EU market. Okay, now the question is, how does this work? And since we got a whole lot of questions in the chat, maybe it would be worthwhile that we repeat the answers to these. So the ETSI standard is exclusively related to the IT part of these routers, modems, and switches. The other standard that the colleagues were asking is concerning the OT part of the same products, which could potentially, in theory, put the manufacturer in a position that indeed they would need to abide to both of the standards in case that they will be placing the product to both OT and IT market. But this is something for a manufacturer to decide at certain point in time and simply see what is his targeted audience for the product itself. As for the EN 304627, since this is an ETSI standard, it is and it will be freely available for anyone that is interested in reading it, and of course, especially for those manufacturers that are either obliged or interested to implement it. The current version of 304627 can be found on ETSI's open doc box. This thing is relatively easily accessible. One Google search will separate you from getting to that link, where you can find not only this final draft, but many others as well. Be that as it may, once you take the standard in your hand and start reading it, the idea is that through the requirements and assessments in the standard, you would actually be able to obtain the presumption of conformity. And finally, when this presumption of conformity is finished, we should all be enjoying the CE marks and the single market throughout the European Union. Now, where is the fit? As I said, it stands as an Class 1 important product. You can find all about that in Annex 3 of the CRA itself. So routers, modems, and switches are at the point 12, and that being said, the standard actually gathers and covers them. So what is exactly covered? Now, this is that good question. Am I even in scope? I think that the colleagues mentioned that, and this is a very, very valuable and very serious question. So this particular standard covers routers, modems, and switches, of course, as it has been said. So routers are pretty much anything that lives in the OSI layer 3, whereas switches are in layer 2, and the modems are these things that connect us to the internet, like fiber DSL, various iterations of cables such as DOCSIS or similar, or satellite and cellular modems. What is, however, out of scope, and that's the important part when you take into consideration this particular standard, are the unmanaged fixed function devices. Okay, so you can find them in the industry under the name of dummy switches. So they do not have any particular functionalities. And of course, the industrial OT, which will be covered under PRN 50770-5. Again, there could be and there will be manufacturers that will fall into both categories. Of course, for this standard, it is a singular standard, but it has many deployments, many use cases. So it goes all the way from the residential to the service providers and carriers. In addition to that, there are supplementary use cases that add additional risks, such as, for example, internet-facing edge, critical infrastructure, carrier networks, or users needing special protection, which means important people, people from the government, or whatever you can consider through the definition being a person of a special protection. Federica, oh, it started working. Very well. Okay. So the basic idea when one will be reading the document is to be aware of the fact that it has a risk-based proportionate approach. So a home router and a carrier router should definitely not face the same checklist, and the requirement applies only when the risk factor is present. So the idea behind the proportionate security is actually that is neither under nor over engineered, which means that in practice you go from baseline to the management exposure, protocol implementations, and data operations, covering all of these use cases and proportionately selecting what is relevant for a particular deployment. To gather them into a one slide, this was probably one of the easiest way to do it. So there are, let's call them 4 themes, and each of these themes has a card or a set of requirements. This, for those of you who are a little bit older, looks like a Jeopardy card on a TV show, you know, and then you say, I'm picking authorization for 500. Here, it's a little bit more simple, so you don't have to do it that way. The document, at least we hope at this moment, is readable enough so that any professional who is a manufacturer should have no particular issue in both reading and understanding it. It is also our hope that the assessment criteria are clear enough so they can be reproduced for the purpose of the self-assessment. But it would be a good idea to go through some of these cards, as I call them. So one of the most important ones, and this is the precursor for, but in the CRA, is the existence of no known exploitable vulnerabilities, which would mean that you have to ship a digital product free of known flaws. Of course, securing it by default, meaning that once you open the box, the device should be safe enough to use and to deploy. The idea behind the factory reset, where you should be guaranteed as a user, because user is the core of the CRA, and naturally everything revolves around the user, for all intents and purposes of that user. So in case that you decide to reset or wipe your device, this is something that will be provided for you by the manufacturer in a very specific and precise way. And of course, living within the fact that you should always be protected and secured by this update one part, which should guarantee you that. Naturally, it moves forward to some expected ideas from the authentication and access control, of course, covering a little bit broader aspect of authenticated session life cycles and protocol access controls, since we are talking about specific devices that have specific way of working. Naturally, protection and resilience. The idea is to have your data protected, your system integrity and secure boot protected, minimize the exposure and maximize the availability and resilience. There is one particularity in this particular standard. It is under the packet part of the requirements, but as you would expect, it is peculiar owing to the fact that we are talking about routers and switches. These devices have a specific way of working. So for some of the use cases, this packet part is what will be important in the end. And of course, wrapping it up with monitoring and data handling. So at each point in time, user must be aware what has previously happened on the device. These records must be auditable and traceable in the time. And of course, in case that user wants to move the device or move to another device, that ability has to be provided as well. So how does it actually go in practice? Well, you should read the whole thing. It's really not that difficult, but in super practicality, you could list all the way to the clause 5. Then you could read the requirements. You could read the appropriate assessment criteria in the clause 6. Decide whether you pass or fail in accordance to these criteria in clause 6. Check the Annex A, which provides you with the CRA mapping in the table called A1. And then the final satisfaction from it is actually that presumption of conformity. In practice, and this is to wrap up the idea behind this, these standards have not been written to make anybody's life miserable. These standards are written because they should present the general cybersecurity hygiene that we need to cater for in Europe. As we, I hope, learned to wash our hands many hundred years ago, it is a fine time that we learn how to wash our hands in the cybersecurity sense, so that the products that we either manufacture in our countries or import in our countries have a reasonable level of compliance, and that we can be sure that each and every citizen in the European Union has the equal opportunity to buy a device, a digital product, as it is defined in the CRA, that is secure enough in all the reasonable senses that we expect from 2026, 2027, and all the years that come in future. Just to provide you with some information about the particular status of EN 304627, it is now in the final draft. That should be dispatched to the public inquiry and the voting phase, which is one of the opportunities for the members of the national standardization body to actually participate in that public inquiry. You are, of course, invited, and this is also something that I have heard from this debate and discussion. It is very good to participate both in your national standardization organizations. It is also very good to participate in NETSI as well. These things, as the colleague said, usually cost much less than a consultant day. So they are pretty good to ensure that you are up to date with all the information, and these information are more than relevant. And of course, the final milestone is the citation in the OJ, or the official journal, so that would wrap up this whole standardization process. This would be all from me. Unfortunately, I do have to catch a plane, but if there are any questions, I would be more than glad to stay 5 or 10 more minutes and then ask our Bolt driver to try to break some of the local laws so he could bring us to the airport as soon as possible.
Last slide.
Oh, yeah. We have the last thank you slide. Yeah. Wait, I still want to say just the single word. These wonderful people here have given you a lot of information. I would just like to invite everyone to participate. Find a way to participate. There are plenty of them. Do not be shy. Do not be discomforted. Do not be in any way intimidated to participate in these processes. This is exactly the reason why we gathered here. And I hope that, if we convert one of you who was not certain how to proceed, this is a great win. Thank you.
Right, I have. Yeah, a question. It's for you.
For me?
Can be for you, but it's also just a general question for anybody that can answer, but it was brought up in your slide. The known vulnerabilities, I know is going to be a huge part of this. I've been doing a lot of testing for EN 18031, and that's part of the general equipment capabilities requirement. And I test mostly like embedded devices, so it's all firmware, and there's no real good databases that you can check. For software applications, you can put it into an SPDX or those known file formats and have it auto-checked against all our vulnerability databases. But for firmware, those databases don't really exist. So if anybody has a good idea of the databases I could be pointing at, or if something like that will come along in the future.
Well, there is an official EUVD database. That's the one that will be taken into consideration. This is always a good opportunity. And once again, this is an invitation. In case that you do possess a specific knowledge, in case that you have already been doing or creating some compliance or pre-compliance, there are ways to get in touch to voice this particular issue and say, okay, we either do have or do not have an aggregated database. This is something that we should update. This is something that we should tackle differently. So now is a good time to, have these information dispatched. Unfortunately, we do not have colleagues from ENISA here who are doing the maintenance of that, but I would suppose that they are the ones that should be informed about that because they are currently maintaining the existing database.
Okay, and what is that existing one called?
Sorry?
What is that existing one called?
EUVD, European Union Vulnerability Database.
But what you want to look at is Boeing.circle.au. That is the Luxembourg cybersecurity. What's their name? However, Circle. They have that is the back end for what the EUVD actually has. And what is so interesting with them is that they also have sightings. That means if you have a CVE and it is shown somewhere, either in a darknet board or in social media, or it's like mentioned somewhere, they have a list of where it is mentioned. So it is not specific to firmware. And I agree with you that is actually also something that they came to me with, because, you know, like we move into that area now, that there is a gap. So that, and it has to do with the way how the technology is built ground up. And this is, again, a little bit a part of what I'm talking about now. So if it's okay, I would like just use that to continue and get back to you at an appropriate point.
Yeah,
okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So hello, I'm my name is Christian Hauschert, but I'm called Fukami by everybody. That is, I take advantage of something from the German identity law, so you can use artist names in your passport, so it is an official name. I'm the rapporteur for boot managers. My background is like almost 3 decades of offensive security. That is my first standard that I wrote. And I also started with a big thanks to like people on the on my left side that without their support and sustained support and their insights and their experience, none of what I'm going to describe here would have been possible. And yeah, so boot managers. How does it work? Yeah, it's like, why can I?
Take it left, right. I think it's there.
It doesn't work. Am I too stupid?
No.
Ah, okay. So why do boot manager matter? They are the part where you have a piece of software that starts, and then like hardware, and then like that is the first layer of software that actually matters for almost all things that you have as a device. And that means when this piece of software is exploited or is like backdoored, you have basically no security, and everything on top can't be secured properly. So that means that you have a vertical here that on one hand, it doesn't really exist that much as a product. So that is mostly open source or very many pieces of software in that regard are in the hands of manufacturers because they don't put it on a market, they put it into their devices. And however, the need for this still exists to say, yeah, we want to find a way to describe that product, and you know, in a way that it complies to not only the Cyber Resilience Act, but in general to secure the foundations that we rely on. And this is one part of the foundation. So what the Cyber Resilience Act calls the supply chain, that is like like operating systems, like network management. They are like core foundations of the technology that we rely on. So when you look back into what these problems were, a lot of them are data bugs, and a lot of them, again, they had an incredible impact on the security of devices. And so one of the main goals of that standard is to avoid this type of issues in the first place. The boot manager is like routers, important class 1. Although it's not so super important here because it's like a repetition of what was like mentioned a couple of times. But what is interesting here is how does it relate to conformity assessment? And why is it so? Why are the important class 1 standards different to some of the others? The reason is that you can use important class 1 standard for self-assessment. And also in general, open, when they are open source, they're actually up to work class 2. But the idea here is to say, you can take that standard, you can apply that standard, and then you have the presumption of conformity without going to third-party assessment or having a certification. That makes these standards actually very valuable, especially for SMEs or for everyone who wants to lower the cost of compliance without losing the actual grip on it. Here are a couple of numbers. It's just my standard, but if you think about what we were talking about, you have to multiply this by 41. So I had 40 meetings just for boot managers. And again, when you look at, Zenelec has, I don't know, 70 Cs or something, or work groups. They all have all, that on work group level and on level of the vertical. Same with Etsy. So we were, I don't know how many 100 meetings we have. When we look at the calendar, it's hard to find dates. And it's also like, if you look for something there, it's just mind-bogglingly much. However, for me, that was one of the most interesting and most insightful things, because I also followed already the Cyber Resilience Act from the co-legislative perspective, where I was already impressed by the way how people seriously talked about that subject, and you could there already see that something is different in terms of how the policy was made. And for the standardization, it's the same thing. I see that while people may or may not disagree with certain things, but everybody wants to get it done. That is really a part that I've never seen before. And I look at EU policy level type of things since also quite a while. And what is so interesting in these processes, everybody who follows that has an experience that even if you think you know everything, you talk to people, and then you discover things that you didn't know about and you should have known, because you are a professional. And still you discover so many things you didn't know, and now you know. And this is what makes the process interesting, and also what a lot of my co-presenters already said. I would extend it a little bit. It's not just only about that it is like fun to do and interesting and learning. It's also standards get better the more people look at it. That has to do with the thing that even if you have a number of experts and diversity that I had like open source, I had like people for national security organizations, industry, SMEs, and so on. So that means I had a very good mix that allows also to understand a little bit the issues that you have in implementation of things. And I think one reason why it progressed so well was exactly that mix, that where we were able to say, okay, this is an idea, does it work for everyone? And if it does work for everyone, it ends up in the standard. So the standard has now, actually there's a wrong number on that. It's not 101, it's 99 requirements. We removed 2 of them. We have an extended thread list, and it's around 170 pages now, not 160, but yeah. The main structure is basically the same like for all of the standards, that we start with the scope and then the references that the standard uses in order to bind these things together. The important parts are clause 5, clause 6. Again, that is the same, at least in all of the Etsy standards. Clause 5 contains the normative requirements with an applicability line, and clause 6 the assessment criteria to assess that requirement. Then we have also a number of annexes that are either informative or normative. Most of them are informative in terms of understanding the relation between the document and the regulation, but also what that standard does, also a little bit different than others. The standard takes a lot of the risk assessment that you would usually do as a manufacturer, and you will see why that matters. That is very intensively described in Annex B, including what the threats are that exist. We have a very extensive threat model developed over this. That's probably one of the most elaborated ones. And then the relation to other standards, because we also we refer to some of the NELEC standards that refer to MCUs and MPUs, and on the other hand to NIST, for the simple reason that this is what a lot of the manufacturers that do hardware actually rely on. It's firmware resilience. And then last but not least, Annex K, that is the cryptographic implementation. Although we do not have anything special, we could also just directly use a reference called ACM, the agreed cryptographic methods that ENISA's ECCG, what is that, the European Crypto Expert Group, whatever. So they built the list of accepted cryptographic methods, and we do not add anything that is specific for boot managers. However, it's like in our own annex that describes it. On the scope is very explicit. The part that makes it a little bit kind of also strange or difficult to determine as a vertical, a boot manager, it does not mean that it is something that takes, from power on to whatever the operating system or handover is. The handover can also be to another bootloader. So that means that you have the initialization, the initializer that hands over to something else that continues with the boot, and that also hands it over to something else that takes control over the device. So that means that we have a relatively, on one hand, from a technical view, a relatively broad approach here. That is bootloaders themselves. That is system firmware. That is embedded firmware. These are network boot, although we only look at the local side of it, not of the remote side. And then the whole question how we deal with exactly where you have software and hardware kind of integrated into each other on that level. But I come to that a little bit later. What we started with in the beginning was using the boot architecture as actually the way to build that standard, to say, okay, we have something that is unverified, something verified and measured. So that is what the architecture actually still shows, but it is the architecture. This is what exists as how it is implemented. Unverified means that there is no actual cryptography, but it really depends on what we are talking about. So the part here is that it reflects what really exists, but it means that you do have boot managers that cannot fulfill or cannot do certain types of cryptography because they are not at the stage where they can actually do this. They don't have enough memory access. They may actually also have a problem with boot time and so on. So that is a valid architecture, but it is not anymore kind of something that determines what you have to do. It is only an informative part to explain what the product actually is. We have that then with verified boot. That means this is the part where every part of that part of the boot chain gets verified and you know, like each loading process get verified. And then we have the measurement that is like just to look at what the states and the registers are, and then transferred somewhere. So what we changed is that we at the end like put in used a different way of how we determine how the requirements are structured. So what we do now is we use immutable. So that means something like a boot manager that is, for example, an MPU or MCU. So the normal manufacturing process is that a manufacturer provides software to their customers, they change it for their device, and then it gets back fused onto the MCU. So that would be, for example, an immutable bootloader. And then we have the verified part that is verified and updatable, and the third is the hardware support of that, or hardware assistance for boot managers. The other parts are the capabilities that boot managers have to have in order to fulfill their function, and also things that are required due to the regulation. And it starts with like the update part, because it is also again the crucial thing, since we are one of the very few, if not the only vertical that allows immutability, because also that is that thing that you can say immutability is not just a problem, it is also a solution to certain things. Because if you cannot change something, it's also harder to exploit. And depending on what level it gets implemented that way, it makes a lot of sense actually to make things immutable. And then replace it if you have a vulnerability, and not rely on an update path. Then what also plays a role is like from where you boot, how you do the configuration, what the hardware is that you support as a boot manager manufacturer. This is one thing that I forgot to mention. Boot manager is a classical vertical where people misunderstand it's a little bit harder to grasp what that standard is for, and what it helps, who it actually helps with the presumption of conformity. Because that is for the boot manager as a product. That is not for someone who has a device and says, oh, I want to do secure boot. They can use it, but they don't get the presumption of conformity for this. It is meant for the presumption of conformity of a boot manager as a product put on the European market, not for the implementation of a boot manager into a product. Therefore, you have the product standard that is the implementation. That might be a little bit confusing also for the requirements, because if you come from a device manufacturer perspective and you read that standard, it might be that you misunderstand that for your purpose. We spent some time actually in these meetings to figure that out, because also for me it was also a discovery how we actually need to deal with that aspect properly in order to make that standard what it is. Because it also means that large parts of the standard are actually more guidance than anything else. Because if people use it, they should be able to derive how they can build their systems. Even though that they might not get the presumption of conformity, still it is helpful on that level to say, okay, what is like kind of the idea, how do these things connect the hardware to the higher level functions like operating systems or like the actual applications. What we also describe extensively is the operational environment, because for boot manager manufacturers, and this is like where it becomes also so important to understand where that plays a role. A boot manager manufacturer normally doesn't really know where their boot manager get used. So let's say, for example, you have an open source boot manager or core boot. You don't know where that is used at one point. So how do you define that? Can you put that into requirements? And we figured that it's very difficult to do, but still, again, that is something that helps people who want to integrate it. Again, they can use it as guidance, but also to get an idea how a manufacturer could, of a boot manager can actually kind of scope their function for that specific vertical, for that specific piece of software. Because if you do the operational part as part of your product description, for example, you say, because this is one of the verticals that has no OT IT split, that is for both. So that means there the physical security and the exposure and so on plays a lot of a bigger role than it might place in the splitted standards, because they target specifically IT or OT, and in our case we target both. So that means that the operational environment plays a role in that standard, and is like also extensively described as what it actually also means for requirements or for the things that the boot manager has to offer to the integrators. Then there's like that's not so super interesting, I think, but the part that all of the standards do is usually they define assets that you have to protect with that standard. For boot managers, that is a lot. So boot managers themselves do not store a lot of data, but what they have are still a number of important components, keys, for example, or configs and so on. And then how can you actually, like kind of configure them, change them, and so on. And that becomes also like the frame for the requirements. I already said that we have a number of threats. They are put into 6 categories. What we used is our existing threat taxonomies, primarily, as I said, NIST and MITRE things that were already or that are already used by a lot of manufacturers in order to mitigate threats. And so what we did were a mix of using the existing things, CVE, CWEs, in order to have a good and comprehensive list of what problems a boot manager faces. And not all of them are only addressed by boot managers. In part, you can only address them in combination with another vertical, for example, with hardware support. Or in parts, it's purely a process by a manufacturer that is kind of responsible for mitigating threats. That means we cannot really put that into that standard. But still, we have put that into that threat table to have a comprehensive overview. And I have realized over the last year, because it was something that we did very early, that it helped people to actually get a good idea how they can map their specific functionality to what their boot manager actually does, maybe differently than others, or what is their main like kind of sales point. Then we have the risk factors. They played a higher role in the beginning of the standard development. At the end, due to the way how we changed the base of the requirements, they do not play that big of a role anymore, because in the beginning they were the determining factor for requirements, and now they are not anymore. They are just more help, again, like for deployment and to understand what type of mitigation you need to offer as a manufacturer, and for an integrator to understand what they have to mitigate with the integration. So that became way more like kind of substantial for the integrators than for the actual manufacturers. That is what I already said. We have like reduced it to 3 use cases. Okay. We have basically 3 use cases that that try to capture the core of what boot managers do. So as I said, like immutable, they are associated with security profile low. Then we have verified and updatable. They are considered medium as a security profile, and then the hardware assisted security with high. And so that means when you see requirements, they are explicitly bound to one or several of the security profiles. I give an example later. Then we have the part that we also changed relatively late in the game, that we aligned the categories directly to the CRA categories. That makes it a little bit difficult for building the requirements because, what is it? Is it secure by default, or is it integrity, or attack surface minimization? So it's like sometimes a little bit difficult to put a requirement into the right bucket. But on the other hand, it helps when you go through this to understand a little bit like what the general idea is and what the clustering means. And also typically for boot managers, you see that the ones that are like where you see the most requirements are integrity and availability. So because they are the 2 things that play the biggest role for this vertical to as a functional aspect of the product that it represents. Here a couple of examples how it's actually written and how we approach that in terms of the applicability. So we have, for example, I don't know, the boot managers shall not implement unauthorized undocumented mechanisms, and that applies to all. Very clearly, that's not like if it's low security, you can like implement stuff that is not documented. And when you look at more specific things, it becomes like the verified part, for example, everything that is like it has to do with cryptography and with the verification usually covers both medium and high. So it costs the verification plus the hardware support for this, or the hardware assistant. And yeah, and then we have things that are even more specific. They are not just the security profile, but they are specific to the function. So, for example, the way how the verification takes place. There's verification that takes place once when you update, or you have verification that takes place every time when the system loads. So you have like these different things that then, this is also why we have so many requirements, because they are very specific to a very specific way how the aspect is handled, and then like what technical capability is behind it, and if that capability is not there, that requirement just doesn't apply. And it is in so far the combination of the security level that you have, and on the other hand, the capability that the boot manager has in order to figure out what the requirements that you exactly have to implement for your product. And the whole clause 6, again, this is standardized. So every Etsy vertical uses the same type of structure. So that means we use the identifier from the requirement. We describe what the objectives of the assessment are, how you assess what the verdict are, what the evidence is. So in so far, it's not super crazy. What's interesting here, however, boot managers are usually not assessed alone. Normally they're assessed as part of CC or other, like, of an integrated product, and then the boot security is assessed as part of the overall product that is like looked at. And it's like, again, a typical CC side aspect. And that made it also a little bit more like challenging to actually come up with something that is a pure software test in that regard. So, however, this is also something where we need more input. So anybody who does conformity assessment and who has experience with that, please join us, give us input for that. Yeah. Then the annexes, I already went a little bit into that. The most important part for the mapping, of course, is like Annex A, to understand what requirements are actually fulfilling what requirement of the CRA. And what's interesting to read for everyone is Annex B, because that is a full like analysis of the security what the boot manager actually represent, and this is very, very comprehensive. And again, also interesting to read, not only for people implementing this, but also for people implementing or like having another product where the boot manager is part of, because that helps with understanding what the threat is that the boot manager has for an integrated product. This is more like the way how you would map it. So is is the product, so from a manufacturer perspective, is my product in scope? I build a boot manager. Is that put on the market? Is that an actual product and not like something like open source where you only have like reduced conformity, like things that I can do. And then you need to understand what your architecture is as a boot manager, understanding the operational environment as much as you can, and then map it to the requirements that you have. Declare the use case and say, okay, this is like medium, low, high, and then look at the requirements that are applicable. So first you would look at what is the security profile that you would apply, and then for the specific capabilities, you look at what capabilities you have or don't have, and those where the capability doesn't exist, it is not relevant for your declaration. And then the whole parts like what, especially for boot managers, they are very documentation heavy. Because the difference to the supply chain verticals to integrated product is that a lot what the boot manager does is allowing capabilities to be there. So is the product able to do certain things, very often relies on if the boot managers allow them to do things. So, and when you go into more details of that, for example, we have that thing with ownership transference and then other things, there is not so much that the boot manager need to enforce a certain security function. It is more about the boot manager needs to give a manufacturer or integrators a choice of how to integrate things. So that makes a couple of the requirements different to what like the high level verticals have, because it is all about how the security function can be implemented. So yeah, this is also part of why the standard is readable and usable as a documentation document about what that actually means. Yeah, I also come with a timeline like everyone, and the boot manager standard is now in the public inquiry and for assessment at the European Commission. We have now 3 months where our further process is to collect input due to the inquiry. Also things, everybody who writes software or writes documents knows when you send it out, then you find all of the bugs and mistakes you did. So we started to also collect them in order for like to see how they can be addressed within the time that we have now. Or if we already prepare that for the updates that are going to come right after the publication. but yeah, at the end, we are in a, I think when we don't get too many like objections in a good shape. But still, however, we like if you have comments, if you look at it and you see stuff that doesn't fit or you have questions, please raise it. For us, it's also important to understand, like, also to, when we build guidance around it, to understand what the questions are that people have with these standards, not only with mine, with all of the standards. But this one in particular, because it's a very technical standard, and it is also one that gets very, in parts, a little bit a confusing perception. That is already, oh, well, yeah.
There is actually a question. So I don't know if Stefan, you have your hand raised. Are you still there, Stefan? Because you had a question.
Do we hear anything?
Should do. Hello, Stefan, are you still there?
Can you just ask the question?
No, I don't know what the question is because okay. But there was a few questions in the Q&A, so maybe you could answer them. We can share them with you. One is there. Hold on. Will the UEFI secure boot be already compliant with standard?
No.
No.
That's because so the only way how you can be compatible with it, okay, zoom out. There are a couple of issues with that. So UEFI is, so we had actually requirements that were kind of in violation of UEFI standards for the simple reason that when we say it shall do this and this, and the specification of like a technical specification say you just need to allow it to happen, it's something very, very different. And we had that a couple of times that really played a role. And that is like what I say, like that was also part of the discovery from ourselves, like in that group, to say, oh, that is not so much about nailing it down, like, but to say, oh, this is a way how you need to allow things to happen from that point, and then you don't violate the existing technical implementation that exists. However, the secure boot as such, so when you strictly follow the UEFI standards, you do not know how you follow the CRA standardization or like the CRA boot managers, because they have a different logic. So when you look at the boot manager from that perspective, you could theoretically, UEFI is an operating system itself. So if you think about what that means, is you could also use an operating system standard to assess a UEFI implementation, because it is like, there is a thing about how, like how you look at a certain piece of technology, especially if you have something that is like, oh, is that boot, is that an operating system, what is what? And on that level, you have a lot of iteration and things that point to themselves, and UEFI is one of those things. It's a very complex technical specification. You can also not implement all of it, from my understanding. However, using it alone is not enough. You have to look at the CRA standard, how it actually relates to what you do, because it is not a generic standard, it is a standard for your product. So you have to look at what your product does, and then look how it complies with the CRA, and not, it's like a UEFI standard, or I follow OCP safe or whatever, and then just map it to the CRA. It also doesn't exist as a mapping, apart from this. So yeah, the simple answer is you are not already compliant. You have to check how you implement your UEFI implementation. What is the other one?
I think maybe we could break for the lunch, and then we can answer the questions in the chat.
We can
okay.
do that. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Christian, for a very detailed overview of that. So there's lunch now served outside. So please stay in the afternoon though, because we'll have these practical demos of the tools being provided by the projects funded by the Commission and information on funding opportunities as well. So thank you very much and see you after the break.